Jason Statham. He's the kind of movie star who looks like he was welded from grit and streetlight. But before the cars, the fights, and the billion-dollar openings, there was a boy from a coal-stained town who learned to balance on the edge of hope. Born the 26th of July, 1967, Jason Statham grew up where childhood was optional and toughness was tuition. His parents worked until the house smelled like oil and detergent. His father sang in pubs and fixed things to keep the family afloat. Jason learned early that dignity is less about what you own and more about what you refuse to give away. At 12, he found a pool and a purpose. He didn't start at 5 like most champions, he started late and worked like someone trying to make up a decade. The janitor turned off the lights and he stayed. The water was cold. The applause was only the echo of his own dives. By 1990, he was leaping from 10 meters, representing England at the Commonwealth Games. He nearly went to the Olympics in 1992, missed selection by a single place. 10 years of sacrifice, and the dream evaporated like breath in winter. He didn't sob. He stayed silent, hardened, patient. That silence became his training partner. When London chewed him up, he learned to sell whatever he could: trinkets, cheap perfumes, a promise of something better. He hustled on streets that never blinked for anyone. But those same streets trained him to keep moving, to stand when the night wanted him to curl up and disappear. Then, someone noticed something raw and real in him. Not a polished face for magazines, but a person who had lived every line on his face. That led to small modeling gigs, small checks, and a strange new currency, a belief that maybe he still mattered. Guy Ritchie. Out of those small chances came a role that changed everything. Guy Ritchie needed someone who didn't act like a criminal, someone who had been close enough to the pavement to speak its language. Jason didn't audition, he told stories, as he had always done, blunt and truthful. Ritchie saw not an actor but truth, and handed him a part that turned his life upside down. With that first big break, the kid who sold watches on cold streets walked onto screens, and people listened. He didn't become famous because of charm. He became famous because honesty plays different on camera. Once the world saw him, he didn't stop. He built a reputation on work that felt real. He trained in combat arts, refused doubles, and treated every stunt like a promise to the audience. The transporter made him a star. Crank pushed him to new limits. He didn't hide the injuries, he wore them like a testament. Torn ligaments, bruised ribs, a shoulder that still clicks. Each scar is a line in his autobiography. But success is a double-edged sword. Some of his films crashed hard, some friendships strained. The machine that elevated him sometimes whispered that actors can be replaced. Still, he found ways to come back: gritty heist films, ensemble throwdowns beside legends, roles that reminded people he understood more than fighting. He understood consequence. Paul Walker. And fame wasn't all adrenaline. It brought family and loss. On sets, he found camaraderie, slow coffee breaks, late-night laughs, a sense of belonging that blurred the line between colleagues and brothers. Paul Walker was one of those anchors. His sudden death in 2013 hit like an abrupt silence in a song. It changed how Jason saw danger. Stunts stopped being just spectacle. They were a shared risk, a trust placed in one another. After that, he pushed harder for safer sets, and never again treated risk like an accident you could shrug off. He also carried private losses, relationships that warmed and then cooled, lovers who taught him how to breathe again before the world pulled him apart. He made mistakes and paid for them with long flights and empty chairs at family tables. But then he found something steadier: Rosie Huntington Whiteley. With Rosie Huntington Whiteley, he found quiet, a slow dawn after long nights. They met at a time when his life needed stillness. She didn't scream headlines. She brought homemade pancakes and the small, ordinary things that stitched a life together. They built a family, welcomed children, and traded in the roar of engines for bedtime stories. For the first time in decades, he learned the art of not performing, of simply being present. Yet, the body remembers every battle, years of self-inflicted impacts, refusing doubles, choosing authenticity left a ledger of pain. Spines compress, shoulders go numb, sleep is a distant friend. In 2014, a stunt went wrong, and a truck plunged into the Black Sea. He escaped, but the memory lives under his skin. He says now that he used to fight villains. Now, he fights gravity. It's a different kind of battle. Quieter, lonelier, but maybe the hardest of all. Today, at 58, Jason Statham is a man who has learned different kinds of courage. He still trains, but not for show, for balance, for the simple ability to wake up and play with his kids. He's wealthy and careful. He's chosen privacy over clamor. He gives back quietly, funding programs that give kids a path off the street, supporting those who take real risks on set. The boy who sold trinkets now helps build futures. And maybe that's why audiences never get tired of him. Because behind every punch, every chase, every cold stare, there's truth. The truth of a man who's been both broke and broken, who's lived the fall and still found the climb. When he plays a hero, it's not fantasy, it's memory. You can see it in his timing, in the way he breathes between action and silence. It's not about anger, it's about control. That's why people believe him. He doesn't act tough, he understands tough. In a world that celebrates noise, Jason Statham remains the sound of quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout, it simply shows up. From the forgotten pools of England to global box offices, he's carried one message: you don't need perfection, you need purpose. And that's what makes his story timeless. Because whether you're fighting for a dream, a family, or just one more chance, his life reminds you grit is louder than talent, and silence can move mountains. If you felt that strength in his story, hit like as a small salute to a life forged in hardship and polished by love. Want more stories about people who turned pain into power? Subscribe and join the ride, because these are the kinds of lives that remind you. Resilience doesn't need applause. It just needs someone to keep going.